Welcome, everyone, to episode 199 of Just Joshing. I am your host, Joshua Pentalaresco. I write stuff and podcast too. Today, my guest is the other Aurora winner in young adult, and also just the Aurora winner for her novel, Fonda Lee. Fonda kicks butt. I mean, that's just the bottom line. She kicks butt. I had a real fun chance to meet her at When Worlds Collide this year. I was actually on a panel with her, which actually blew my mind. Actually, after recognizing her, it's like, holy crap, you're awesome. And I talked to her about my Dr. Seuss panel, and she had to unfortunately miss it, much to both of our chagrins. But Fonda was really cool, and I've been waiting for this opportunity to chat with her, and thank you very much for doing it, Fonda. You rock. And and so beyond that, wow. So actually, I have another fun Fonda story. I'm just going to mention this real quick because I got a lot to talk about at the end of the episode, so I'll get to that. But when I won the Aurora, so one of the first people that congratulated me was Fonda. I don't know who congratulated who first, but we had a chance talking, and Fonda actually made me realize something really cool, and I kind of want to thank her for that. I'm around some amazing people. I literally am talking to Fonda Lee, who is a Nebula award-winning, Aurora award-winning author, one of the most talented people currently in the field, and we're just congratulating each other, and I'm just like, wow, this is one of my peers. That is so freaking cool. And that's honestly it. Anyway, I'm not going to go on much longer here. Here's Fonda.
This is what I'm doing. I've turned the recorder officially on, so if you have anything incriminating you'd like to say, make it good.
All right. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay. Very, very shrewdly completes the fist there, so that's well done. So, as I said offline, I'm going to start with this. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm good. I just got back from a crazy 8-day travel trip, and I get to go to BC for the Auroras. By the way, congrats. You got nominated for a lot of stuff.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm really bummed that I'm not going to be there. I have to, I have hopefully someone who will be in the room for me in the event that I win anything, but I've been traveling so much this year, and it's like, I just, no more budget.
I got you. But
yeah, I really wish I could be there.
Yeah. Well, I think you have a legit shot with all the books, although I think the category you're going to have, I think it will be the hardest one for you to pull the win out. It's going to be the young adult category. That is a loaded, when I was reading them, it's like, they're all good. Damn.
Yeah. No, there's some awesome stuff on the ballot this year.
Yeah, so like I said, good luck. I hope you take at least one, because I think you got 3 nominations this year. So I mean, it seems like
yeah. I mean, on one hand, that's fantastic and awesome. On the other, I'm like, it's totally going to split the vote. So we'll see. But hugely honored and happy to have recognized in multiple categories. It was sort of an odd year because it was one of those years where I had a number of projects all hit at the same time. So I'm not sure if I'll ever have as prolific a year again. 2017 was kind of crazy.
Well, convergence, right? Right place, right time, and it was your time. And it was like you from what I gather, it's a feat not only just have deals in one published Big Five, but you have deals in multiple Big Five houses. You've been working probably on this for a few years now, and it's just one of those situations where you got the opportunity, and just the way timing worked out. One house like, hey, I'm ready, and it's, hey, I'm ready. And you're like, this is so cool. I'm going to seem so prolific and awesome just this one year. And
yep, it's funny because as a writer, you kind of work and hope that it'll see the market at some point in the near future, and you don't really have that much control over the timing. So you can have these years where it's like everything that was backlogged hits at the same time, and it's such a long process that it's sort of strange because all these things hit the market and you were working on them like 2 or 3 or 5 years ago. And now to see people reacting to them, it's like, oh yeah, I wrote that, and people like it. That's cool.
must be also kind of strange on this sense, too, because I would imagine you are a much different writer now than you were 5 years ago.
Right.
So it's almost like, in one sense for you, I don't know if you read your own work eventually, go down that every so often, just because, not as an ego thing, but just more like, okay, where have I come from? Where am I at now? I mean, you must feel because I figure for me, the window's about 3 years. So 3 years is when I evolve, like something changes, or what I care about personally, right, evolves a little bit. I would imagine it's probably similar to you, too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you get some distance from your work by the time it hits the market. And yes, the stuff I'm working on now, I've evolved as a writer, but at the same time I'm working on some ongoing series, like the series I'm working on right now, the Greenbone Saga. It's been such a journey because I started writing the first book, believe in 2014, something like that, okay. Somewhere around there. And then when it sold, it came to market really quickly and it's out in 2017. I'm working on the second book now, and sometimes I just think back and living with these characters for like a really long time, I have kids, and so sometimes I'll look back and be like, yeah, when I started working on this, like my son was still like in diapers. It's so bizarre.
It's like oh my gosh, he's in grade 1 now. Holy shit, what the heck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in one sense, they're gonna grow up the same way, almost on par with your kids, right? Depending on how long many books there are in the series. So wow, that's actually a sobering thought that you think about that.
Yeah. I mean, even one book. When you write one book, you have to expect you're at least going to live with it for 2 years. By the time you write it, edit it, it goes to a publisher, it goes through the whole production process, and it hits the market, and then you've got to promote it and talk about it, and then awards season's like a year later, so you're still talking about the book a year later, and so you got to live with it at least 2 or 3 years. So you have to really commit to a given project, because you're gonna have to.
You're gonna be there for a long time.
Talking about it for a while.
Yeah, you're gonna be there a while, and you don't ever want to get to the point where you're sick of your own book, because that'd be the worst thing. Because you're like, because again, it's also, I think, I mean, 3 years back, 5 years back, you worked really hard on this book, and even though you're probably at the point where you're thinking of, okay, what's the next really cool thing I can do for fun? Because because I'm sure, I imagine for you, because you're working on 2 series right now, like which by the way, that's a heck of a feat too. How do you keep it all together? Do you like have like a notepad, or do you have like, or is it like
I honestly don't know.
Or is there like a tug of war, and like, let's say the car of ideas, like there's one in the front seat and one in the back seat, and they wrestle and they switch positions all the time. Write me.
Somewhat. Yeah. I like having multiple publishers and multiple projects, because at any given time you feel like everything's crashing and burning somewhere, and so you'll hit a part. Jade City's a great example. I remember I was writing this book, and it's the most ambitious book. It was my adult debut. It was really quite a project. And there were multiple times when I was like, oh, I just can't do this. I don't know where to go, and this isn't coming out the way I wanted to. And so, fortunately, I was on contract to write, at the time, Crossfire. So I could set Jade City away for a few months and focus on my other project, and then I would come back to it and then be like, oh, it's so clear, like I know exactly what I need to do. So having some time away from a project, I think, is really great for the creative process, and you can always sort of trick yourself mentally and be like, okay, well, I'm a crap writer in this, but it's okay because I have this other project. So
that's right.
Not all hope is lost.
I suddenly have
you don't feel like your career is dead at any given time.
See, I have this now imagination of even like a race car that just goes on fire every so often, then you just switch to another car. almost like the Wile E. Coyote, except you don't get burned, and we're probably nowhere near as tough as that guy was, because that guy was insanely tough. But
kind of have to be that to be an author. You're kind of like a Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, you just
publishing.
Yeah, you just don't buy from Acme. Just whatever you do, that just seems like a bad idea. It never works. But no, I actually agree with you with the multiple project thing. I obviously I don't like right now. I'm working on a. So after When Words Collide, I had this thing like, you know what, let's just go for it and try it. So I'm writing this crazy novel as fast as I can, and I can't believe how easy it's coming out at this point. Now there's going to be a point where I realize it's going to be like, I suck, the world sucks, and everything sucks. And right. But I'm also working on something I want to do for Kickstarter next year, which is like a comic / homage to Dr. Seuss. Called the Stick Figure Revolution, where it's about stick figures that get drawn by the creator so bad they revolt. That's gonna.
That sounds great.
It's fantastic. But writing like Seuss is super hard, right? So it's such a fun challenge. And then I'm also I have my next. I did a poetry series for a very smaller publisher. I'm going to be trying. I kind of invented a board game with the next poetry series I'm doing. So I'm kind of doing a merger of both. So anytime I'm working on one of these three things, right? Then there's the Seuss thing's a small project. The poetry thing's a medium-sized project, and the novel obviously is the big project. Right. So
you've kind of got like short-term, medium-term, and long-term things to look forward to, and depending on like where your head space is at any given time, you might have energy for a long-term project, or you can be like, I'm going to knock off this thing that's like a little more manageable because it's a short-term thing.
Yep.
Plus, you've got your podcasting work too, which I imagine is like kind of a different way to refill the creative well in a sense.
Well, this for me is like a cool little bonus because I get to meet very creative and awesome people like yourself, and they tell me their stories, and that's always interesting, inspiring, and fun usually, right? So and so I get to come out and it's like, wow, how did I meet this cool person? And that's 99.1% of the time. That's exactly what I feel like. There's I've had some interesting characters come my way that made me go, oh, how did you get to where you're at? I'd like to know. But by and large, everybody I've interviewed's been great. And so it's like I come out of that with like, hey, I can do it too. And from my end too, it's fun now because I'm getting to the point with the podcast where people are coming to me. It's like, hey, that's so cool. How did this happen? But it's important as a creator. I think it's really important that you have diversity in what you're doing. Because if you don't, the last thing you want is to ever feel like what you're doing is monotonous. Right, because once you get to that point, it's not going to be fun, and when it's not going to be fun, well, I have this feeling sometimes when I read like people that have been stuck doing certain series for a very, very long time, that you can almost see like these authors going, "Can I please write something else?" It's like, no, we'll pay you for this. And you can just see their wheels churning as they're trying to produce the book, but you can tell they're bored. And when you get to that point, it's not fun to read those books anymore. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. I mean, I write Jade City is ostensibly sort of in the epic fantasy subgenre, but I look at some of the epic fantasy writers who are able to put out series of like 10 or 12 books, and I just don't ever see myself doing that, honestly.
I'm scared of that. I mean, it's a feat. I kudos to Robert Jordan, kudos to Brandon Sanderson, because they seem to be well on their way of doing that, and kudos, because that's an amazing accomplishment, no matter how you look at that. But, I'm really happy with 3. Like, 3 to me seems like a really nice number. There's one series in my head I could do 5, but again, they feel each very different. They almost like one-and-done books that kind of just tie to an overarching thing. I think maybe if there was like that, I could do more than that, but I don't ever want to do that. I don't feel like I have it in me to do that interconnected 10 to 12 to 15 to go, who the hell knows how many books there are. It's just like, I don't think I could keep myself interested, and that's... Right. I think that's fair. How about you?
I might be able to do multiple series within like a world. Like if I was really invested in that world, I could maybe do more stories in it. I'm actually thinking about doing some additional sort of spin-off stuff in the Greenbone Saga world, but we'll see where that goes. I've got this trilogy on the block, but I think there's like there's a way to keep things fresh for yourself if you're signed up to do the series, or if you want to do the series, and the creative death is if you get stuck in this process where you have to keep it going for commercial reasons or whatever, and it ends up being repetitive or it feels formulaic. I just can't imagine doing something like that and still having a lot of enjoyment out of it. I mean, I've spoken to writers who really are happy to keep writing the same series for 15, 20 books, but I just have too many ideas in my head, and I would feel like I was sacrificing the opportunity to do other things. To each their own. Well, no,
everybody has their own ways of making it work. I just know that, like, for me, like, I know, like, I have this, like, novel in my head that's really cool world, really, really fun. I have another series that just feels like a video game. I kind of want to do that, and I want to also just play in different mediums too. Like, I want to do an audio series next year because I think it's such a neat format. Whether I make a dime on it, I'll have no idea. But it just seems like one of those really, like, again, we're in a really interesting time where in the fact that we can try a lot of different things. And I feel like as just a creative person, you should try, right? And even if you fail, like you strike out, I mean, so what? I mean, you can always go back to what's worked for you before. I mean, that is the one thing about your thing. Like, you have two series. You have another, and you have the young adult and Jade City, and you can always go and do a story in those worlds if you wish, right? If things, but you can always just go, okay, I want to try something new, right? Like, and even if it doesn't work out, it's like, well, the other stuff's still doing good. I can always go back to that. I mean, it's kind of like you're in situations where it's like, I have a certain comfort zone that's okay, but I don't want to be too comfortable. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting once you become kind of an author with a few books out and have a established brand, so to speak. There's this, there's also the, like, pressure from the market in terms of, okay, well, you're established in whatever. Let's say your first novel was in my case, it was a young adult science fiction novel. It's amazing how quickly the publishing industry and readers start to label you as a writer. I know a writer who, started out writing urban fantasy and was very successful doing that and wanted to do a science fiction series, and the publisher was like, no, we want you to continue doing urban fantasy because that's your brand and that's, where we're going to put you. And it was really frustrating for them as a result, and I think there's authors do things like take on pseudonyms in order to branch off and do other genres, and there's all these sort of different tactics in terms of being able to manage different streams of work in your career. And the way I sort of think about it is a analogy, or it was actually a piece of advice that another author gave me once, which is like, imagine a Venn diagram, and one big bubble is what I want to write, and the other big bubble is what the market wants from me. And there's like you have to sort of target that overlap section of like what you want to write and what the market wants to read. And that can be sort of a tricky balance to be had as a career author. Like, what's going to sell versus what I want to do to also grow myself creatively.
I hope I get the career of Dan Simmons. That's my goal, because he can write everything. He writes everything, like everything, right? But I think the trick is, okay, so you know where your Venn diagram is, right? So what you do is you try to find the edges of that diagram. You go, okay, can I do the? And what you gotta do is comfortable for you, obviously, naturally. But you're like, okay, if I push the diagram here, I can extend my circle here. Right, and then and I think that's how you do it. You don't, like, obviously, like in your case, like if you decided to do a romance novel, for example, I'm not saying you would, but I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, that would be a little outside what your fans would know you for.
Yeah.
Right? But let's say you did an urban fantasy. That's not as far away from what you're currently doing.
Right.
Right? And so it'd be like, and you would extend that bubble. I'm not saying you want to do romance, by the way. This is just an example, right? A map to maybe get there. But that would be how you do it. Now, let's say you want to write more literary stuff, right?
Right.
Or maybe you go to the more you just work your way to the more popular genres. Okay, so what's a natural leap from science fiction, young adult? What's a natural leap from young adult? Maybe you do a romance type, like not like a romantic novel, but like young teen.
Yeah, you've got to kind of lay out the stepping stones. I know a number of authors who've kind of dealt with this. It's like you can't. It's really hard to switch category and genre together, but you can kind of do the 2 or 3 steps to get somewhere else if you wanted to go there, right? So it's like, oh yeah, if all of a sudden I decided I wanted to write, I don't know, mystery thrillers, that's like a completely different genre, but I could write a science fiction mystery thriller, and then now I'm like kind of I'm broadening that edge, and then you can take another step. Fortunately for me, I don't plan on writing anything that's not science fiction and fantasy for the foreseeable future. So I'm kind of working at least within what's the sandbox that I know I'm in. Yeah. And then which different parts of the sandbox do I want to dig around in?
Well, I actually it's funny you mentioned mystery thriller, because I think your exo universe in particular, I think that would be you could do something like that there if you wanted to.
Right, I'd love to do a techno thriller or a near future mystery thriller. I'd love to do something like that. I actually love working within the science fiction and fantasy genre and the places where there is overlap with other genres. That's really clear with Jade City, because it's a fantasy novel, but it's also draws really heavily on the crime fiction genre. So I actually love that. So I sort of think of everything that I work in. I think science fiction fantasy is my broad bucket. But within that, I've got young adult, I've got adult, and I've got all the places where I can pull from other genre inspirations and layer that in.
And that's kind of where that's my favorite actually sandbox myself. I love for me growing up, it was Asimov, it was Bradbury, right. It was people like Charles DeLint, Neil Gaiman, some really Terry Pratchett. That's a cool wheelhouse to grow up and read in all the time. And then also I still enjoy writing, and what I enjoy doing to this day. It's kind of it's a really fun playhouse. So how about you? What got you in this path?
Now, the path of being a writer in general.
Well, actually, we'll start there.
So I wanted to be a writer when I was about 10 years old. And I think I probably still have some school assignment where it's what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think I wanted to be a writer, and if not a writer, then a veterinarian. Okay. Or something like that. But I sort of just always thought, I didn't have a lot of, this has changed, but I didn't really think that writing was a real option for me. I mean, honestly, I didn't know any other. I didn't have many authors come through my school, and I didn't think of them as real people. I wrote honestly were old white guys, and so I didn't imagine. I think the only Asian American woman I knew who was a writer was Amy Tan. That was it. So I never really kind of thought of writing as a viable career choice, and I college and studied business, and then went into corporate America and worked in the business world for many years, but always kind of just wrote as a hobby. It was always my side passion. Wrote fan fiction, wrote stories just for fun, wrote in a journal, all that stuff. And I reached the point where I was so busy with my day job and with family, and but that I didn't have time to write anymore. So it was just a hobby that kind of faded away. And at some point I sort of had a epiphany, almost like a mid-career crisis of sorts, where I realized that I don't enjoy this job that much, and what I really want to do is write stories. And I'm kind of one of these people who's like an all or nothing sort of person. So if I was gonna get back into writing, I was like, this time I'm going to take it really seriously. I'm going to write, and I'm going to write to be published. So I took a number of slow, inexorable steps towards doing that. I cut back on my day job, which was pretty demanding at the time, and started taking an online writing class and just getting in the habit of writing and going to writing conferences. And I went to the Bible Paradise Writers Workshop, and just sort of made it a goal of mine. I was going to write a novel, and I did. I wrote a novel, sent it out on into the query trenches, and was kind of collecting rejections for that. And while I did that, I wrote what would become my debut novel, which was Zero Boxer, and took that to a conference. Ended up with a bunch of agent requests, and signed. Did months of revision, went out on submission and sold it, and kind of haven't looked back since then. So that's kind of how I got into it. I only wish that I had done it sooner. Now that I am a writer, I feel like I'm making up for lost time, and that I've got all these ideas. I should have started doing this years ago. So no regrets. But it's definitely it's had its emotional ups and downs for sure. I think any creative career does, because it's so it's like the opposite of what I was trained for, right? Which was a life in the corporate world, which is honestly pretty straightforward in the sense that you go to work at 8:30 and you come home at 5:30 or what have you, and you can kind of draw boundaries between your work and your life, and you know that after a couple of years you get an annual performance review, and if you do well, after a few years you get a raise, and so on. It's pretty linear, and you can kind of see where the path is. And this is like the exact opposite of that. It's like absolutely no predictability, and so it's been a transition for sure. But I wish I'd done it sooner.
Yeah, well, my whole writing / podcasting career has been an entire accident. I have no shame in admitting there's been no
foresight.
well, it's not even foresight. It's just like you have these hopes for stuff,
right?
And it never quite works out the way you envision it working out. But sometimes it's better, right? And sometimes it's like, okay, I had this book I was going to self-publish. I had this master plan for an ebook. And my first person that bought it was someone I interviewed. And she goes, what are you going to do with it? And I told her, this is what I just told you. And she goes, well, I started opening up a publishing house. I got to deal with Ingram. I'll publish your book. That's how I got published by a publisher. That's literally it. I did not submit it, nothing. It's just one of those things where it was like, oh, well, that's a thing. Robert J. Sawyer offhandedly mentioned podcasts. I used to do written interviews. Like I would write these. I would have a conversation like this, what I'm having with you. I'd write down the key points. I'd write it. I'd send it to you to make sure I didn't misquote you anywhere. And then I would post the interview on my blog. You can go back on my blog far enough, you'll see those interviews. And but no, he says podcast. Like, I didn't think about a podcast. I could do a podcast. Could I? Yes. That was it. There's no there's no like one of those like one. For me, I found one thing has led to another, and that's how this works. All right, and I've learned that, like, for me, although I can't control what the final result is, whether I get into a publishing house, whether I'm doing it myself, or whether I sell or don't sell, like there's a lot of stuff you can't really control with this, and you have to kind of accept that, right? But on the same token, I find, like, probably what you've done with your corporate training, it's actually a lot of that stuff's really important in this side of the career too. You have to, it's creative, it's fun, but you have to be disciplined. You have to show up. You have to put in the work,
so true.
Right? You have to put in the work. You have to hold yourself accountable. You can't just ride through things and hope, that it's gonna magically work out. No, you have to be committed to what you're doing. It's the only way anyone's going to take you seriously. So in a lot of ways, like what you did, you trained yourself in the habits of what you needed to do this. Here's a thought for you, something maybe comforts you a little bit. Younger you I'm not saying couldn't have done it. I from what I can gather from just talking to you the few times I've talked to you, you're bright, you're smart, you definitely have your head on your shoulders. I think you probably would have succeeded. But would you have had the habits today that make you the success you are then? Maybe you wouldn't have. Like, maybe this is the right time and the right place.
And I might have written completely different things, or, I don't know if I would have kind of reached the point in my career or family life where I felt like this is the right thing to do. So I don't regret the things that I did before I became a writer at all, but, I do wish that I had at least started building those a little bit earlier. When I do talk to school groups, I talk to a decent number of school groups. I give a couple pieces of advice to the high schoolers who inevitably come up and say, oh, I want to be a writer too. And my advice to them is, first off, go and live life, because that's like the fuel for all of your stories. You get inspired by places you've been and people that you meet and experiences that you have and jobs that you've had. So, like, the biggest thing you can do for yourself as a writer is to have a lot of inspirational experiences to draw upon. And the other piece of advice I give is, it can totally be done. You can absolutely be a writer, and you just need to find time for it in your life and tell yourself that you're a writer. Before you don't have to be published. You don't have to, necessarily meet any specific milestones to be able to make writing a part of your life. So, I wish I'd taken my own advice at some point earlier.
Well, that might be true, but just from the outside looking in, I think it's worked out rather well for you, and I mean this, you seem to be on your way to maintaining a very prolific career. Your books are fairly popular. You've been nominated for some big awards. You're recognized. I think that says an awful lot of your timing. And I
have absolutely no complaints there. Hopefully, and lots more to go.
Well, absolutely. I sincerely wish you nothing but continued success. I hope that wherever it leads you, just keeps you going to bigger and better things. Honestly, you seemed really cool when we met, and I was like, I wish you could have gone to the Seuss off.
Yeah, that sounded like a lot of fun. How did it go?
So you missed Fox and Socks being read in a Yoda voice. There's no, it gets better. There's a Valley Girl author reading Fox and Socks, a Russian accent, a Jewish accent, a British accent. I felt bad for whoever was in the other room, the conference room beside us, because we were laughing so hard. Right, I already figured out a couple ways to make it better next year. Yeah. So but I'm definitely going to use the rule's going to be when you read Seuss next year, you have to do it in a unique way. You have to slam it, sing it, do a different voice. You have to do something creative while reading whatever you're going to be reading. So that's going to be the rule. But beyond that, I'll let anyone can play. It's a recess panel. I'm totally comfortable being the guy running the recess show.
That sounds fabulous. Hopefully, I'll get another chance to.
Yeah. So you're gonna go to Wentworth Collide? You're gonna go to Wentworth Collide next year?
I am uncertain because Worldcon, as you know, is in Dublin next August, and I am going to be there and hoping to plan some family travel in Ireland around that time. Which
totally makes sense. I don't blame you. I would, as cool as we are here, I can't fault you for saying, hey kids, you want to see Ireland and tour with the family? I can't fault you for that. I can't. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Sounds real fun, and it sounds like you already have a busy year and lined up next year. So, okay, I'm going to ask this just real quick, because we're getting to the point where I think we're at the end of the interview. Do you have anything coming out soon-ish, or is it kind of in the process of everything's going through? You just handed in a book, so I'm assuming that's going to be a while before it actually sees print publication. But do you have anything else coming out?
I am right between releases. So my sequel to EXO, which is called Crossfire, came out this past June. And my next work, which will be Jade War, the sequel to Jade City, will be coming out next spring, summer. I don't have an exact release date yet.
Okay. okay, because this is gonna air soon. Like you're kind of like the last episode before episode 200. I can't believe I've done 200 of these.
Wow.
But, yeah, I know. I've been doing this a while. Who knew? Like I said, I never best thing you never planned this stuff, right? So,
yeah.
But
this sounds fun. Next thing you know, you've done like 200 of them.
Yeah, exactly. This is just the way it goes, right? I again, in my case, I am perfectly okay with my entire career just being accidentally stumbling from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. I'm really good with that. You know, it's like, what happened? I did stuff, things happened. I'm really good at that. If that is my career in a nutshell, I did something right.
There's worse ways to... I mean, and that's kind of the beauty of going to cons and to going to industry events and talking to other authors and other creators is like these things kind of come. You can't ever count on them, but when they do come, they come out of like the most random places sometimes.
Well, it's also just like it's all okay for me. I can't speak for you. I can only speak for me. It's always been a convergence. It's like it was almost like a meant to happen thing. Like for example, like my nomination this year.
Right.
I didn't nominate myself for the award. I literally woke up one morning and I had an email. That's how I knew I was a final. Like I didn't nominate myself. Someone nominated me. Enough people believed in me to put me into the finals. That's a cool thing to wake up to. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Right?
I had my book deal for this trilogy that I'm writing right now, I can attribute to a tweet. Because I'd spent 3 years writing this book. I actually ended up writing up a post for it on online with my editor and my agent because it was like I still couldn't believe that it worked this way. I had this book that I'd been working on for 3 years, and I just sent it to my agent. He'd read it first draft, and we'd gone through some revisions, and I'd sent him a new draft, and I said I think it's ready to go. And then this was like 2 days later. I saw somebody on Twitter, another author said, I'd love to see like a Game of Thrones-esque book, but set in like an Asian fantasy world with gang families. And I was like,
yes!
What was that? You just summed up something that I've been working on for 3 years. And an editor quote tweeted it and said, it hashtagged it MSWL for manuscript wish list and said, if anyone has this, send it to me. I didn't see that tweet, but a friend of mine who happens to be in my my beta reader group did, and he sent it to me, and I forwarded it to my agent. My agent sent the manuscript to that editor, and like, boom. It was like...
magic.
Yeah. Sometimes you're just like... It's funny because there's so much in our business that depends on luck, but you have to do the work and you have to show up in order to take advantage of the luck. It's like the luck is just kind of like it's being flung around the air, but you kind of got to like be there with your arms open.
Okay, so
there's like the gaping maw hole of luck.
Okay,
and you gotta have work that you've done to shove into that gaping maw hole.
So I have 4 rules to life. Would you like to hear them? I think
sure.
Show up, rule 1. Do your shit, rule 2. 3, don't quit. 4, the rest is rain.
That's basically like the philosophy for being able to have a creative career.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's a philosophy for everything. To be honest with you, I am the biggest amazement I have learned, like in the last few years, is how many people have the inability to follow rule 1. Just show up. Mm-hmm. It's amazing what is accomplished just doing that. Do your shit. Know what you want. Go for it. Why not? Don't quit. Life's gonna kick your ass sometimes. Just the way it is. You got it's not everybody goes through a process. At the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, if you're still standing, you're not dead.
Yeah.
You're going through it.
Yeah.
You can get stuff happen. The rest is rain. Life, a lesson I learned about 10 years ago is there's so much in life that you do have no control over. A lot of people like to believe they're in control of it. They're not. It's not. That's not how this works. The question is, are you smart enough just to do your things?
Emerald City Comic Con.
Yeah. Emerald City Comic Con?
Oh, no, I was just Yeah, so I was just sort of going to add on to something you said, which is I was at Emerald City Comic Con. I was having this conversation with a bunch of other authors, and we were all talking about how when we started off, we were in like critique groups or writing workshops or classes, and all of us felt that like we knew other more talented writers in that group. Like all of us, we're all like, you know, published authors with multiple books under our belts. We're like, none of us was like, oh yeah, I was like the best writer in that group. We could all point to someone else in those like early years when we're like, oh yeah, that's the person who's like the most talented writer. That has to be the person who gets published. But like more often, almost 9 times out of 10, they weren't, because they weren't the ones who kind of stuck around. It might be like super talented, but it's just keeping going.
Well, Stephen King said best, talent is actually the most overrated thing on the planet. And he's right. Talent, I mean, don't get me, like, there are people more talented than me. I'm around them sometimes. I'm like, what am I doing here? But I'm just following my rules. I'm showing up and doing my thing. That's it. And I don't have I can't guarantee where I'm going to end up. I hope someday I have like what you have, like book deals and things of that nature, and I'm doing my podcast, and maybe it's the next Joe Rogan thing, maybe it's not, I don't know. Like that, I mean, those are the quote unquote pipe dreams. That doesn't mean I don't have a plan to get there. It just means like those are the big goals. I may never get there, and that's fine too, right? But the thing is, what I've learned in this life is that the biggest person in your way of success, more often than not, is you. And if you're smart enough to get out of your own way, good things will happen.
Yeah.
You know?
And like you said, right? People start to notice. You do 200 of these things, fans are going to notice. So.
Well, also just the quality of guests. I mean, when I started, I was getting just local authors. I was just asking to come on the show, right? Now I'm getting people as prolific as yourself to come on my show, which I think is just freaking cool, right? Right? And I'm getting bolder too. I'm asking bigger people because, like, why not? I have credibility now, right? And like I said, and even if I get a no, well, I had no to start with anyway. I'm just getting that reaffirmed or not reaffirmed at this point in time, and I'm okay either way it goes, right? I just every moment's an opportunity. That's kind of how I look at things. Like, every time I have a chance to go out and meet someone like yourself, it's an opportunity to connect. It's an opportunity to lead. Who knows where it's going to lead down the road? Like, I hope you come back someday. I would love to keep chatting with you. You know. But that's
only if we do a Seuss off.
Okay, done. I'll take you on. Name your book.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So many, I'm sure I have like a box of Seuss books.
Well, so I'll tell you what. I'm going to give this away right now. This is what I'm doing next year. It's called the Seuss. It's called the Stitching Seuss. This is how it works. I'm bringing a whole bunch of Dr. Seuss books. Same rule. You can read any book you want, and then depending on how many people play will be your time limit. Let's say there's like 30 people in the room, which I'm not going to hold because the panel was received very well, right? Let's say there's 30 people in the room. Well, you only got a minute. So you got a minute to read something, right? But when you read it, right, you could have to do it in a unique way, whether it's a different accent, whether you sling it, you slam it, you know, you dance it. I don't care what you do. The whole point is just to have fun. I think that's going to...
You should have team entries.
You know, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if I'll get to that. I don't know if I'll get to that in year 2.
Right.
But how about this? When you do come, if you bring a team, I'll let you all go. Okay.
All right.
Sounds like a plan.
I gotta think about this.
I know, but I think like just choose good teammates, you know, and there will be fun is the fun of what you're doing is the most important thing. But if you're very creative and coordinated, I mean that's got to be at least some props, right? So.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, totally. Miss Fonda, I think we have a good interview here. I don't know. I could be wrong. What do you think?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
We had fun, right? Like you said, fun is the most important thing.
Absolutely. So, how about you talk about what just came out, and how can people find you? Would you do it?
Yes. So, my most recent book is Crossfire, but you'd want to start with EXO first. And you can find it wherever books are sold. Your local independent bookstore is a great place. Online, of course. And you can find me at fondalee.com. Pretty straightforward website. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm at Fonda J. Lee. Or you can find me wherever I have events. So I think what am I doing for the rest of the year? I'm going to be on tour in California in October. And then I'm going to be at World Fantasy in November. And then I think I'm done putting my head down and getting some more writing done.
Sounds like a plan.
I want to thank Fonda Lee very much for being part of my show. Fonda, you're welcome back anytime. Wow, I've done 200 episodes. I think actually before I get to that, I'm going to talk about my art show tonight. Tonight I got to read some new reading material in front of a live crowd at my sister's art show. My sister is amazingly talented. I love that she's putting herself out there more and more. In my opinion, she's probably one of the best photographers I've ever seen. And number one. Number two, I'm her brother. Yeah, I'm biased. I don't care. I mean, honestly, I can say this with all certainty. She is a world-class photographer. She's an amazing painter. She's a talented illustrator, and I'm really lucky to have her as my sister. Sis, I love you. Her show's at Wheat's Cafe in Calgary. If you're in Calgary, check it out the rest of the month. Their paintings are there. Get her little photo book. Look, it's awesome. I'm also going to close off with a special little birthday wish here. Sophia Evangelina turned 16 today. So if you are listening to the show, look her up. She is one of the most inspiring people I've talked to this year. Sophia taught me that there is simply no excuses. At 16 years old, Sophia Evangelina is taking on the world. And I cannot help but admire her guts, her talent, and her drive to be the best she can be. And at 16, she can do that. A lot of people say you're never too old, you're never too young. Amazing. I don't have any excuse. Nobody does. And that is a precious gift. Sophia, thank you very much for being an inspiration to me. Happy birthday. I hope it's a swell one. And tell Mama Bear I said hello. And that will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. To support this podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. You can subscribe to the podcast either through Podomatic, iTunes, any player. Just subscribe to it, And if you like it, leave a review. If you don't like it, don't tell anybody. I'll understand. Trust me, I really will. Buy my books, The Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God, or forthcoming Alice Zero, which will be published by me under Just Joshing Media this January. Support those books, support anything I'm doing there. That'd be great. I have a YouTube channel, Josh Penteloresco. Past episodes are there. But no matter what you do, show up, do the thing, because great things happen if you do. All right? I'll see you for episode 200 tomorrow.
Josh.